And so this led you to Columbia, to the PhD program in Columbia?
No, I had throughout that I'm talking about, over this period, I had been enrolled in the NYU program.
NYU program.
Yes.
Right.
And I continued in the program, taking courses, a limited number of courses, while I worked at the Jewish Board of Guardians as a psychotherapist, and looking to see if there were any openings in schools of social work faculty. So I read innumerable bulletin boards, and I sent out applications, and I sent one to Wisconsin. I saw an ad that they were looking for faculty in Milwaukee at the branch of the School of Social Work here. And so I wrote and sent my vita, and I, with great glee, received the response from Martha Miles, who was the dean at the time, indicating an interest in having me come to Wisconsin for an appointment and so on and so forth, which I did, and it was successful, and they hired me.
So at this time now, these are your early years at school. You're teaching, you're working on your dissertation.
That's right.
And you're going back
in the summer.
To the summer for school. So you were a busy, one busy person.
Yes.
Yes, I think your substantive knowledge base has always been the field of child welfare.
That's right.
And how did you get attracted to that? What was important? Like why that particular field, other than aging or other than any of the other criminal justice? Why child welfare?
Well, if you're teaching Hubsy, you know, you're teaching a good deal of child development. And if you're teaching a good deal of child development, you're dealing with a good deal of the kinds of problems that are likely to result from disordered families and so on and so forth. So all along in teaching Hubsy, I was also teaching, to some extent, child welfare.
And the interest in child welfare, like you not only got interested in a piece of child welfare, you got interested in the whole of the child welfare system, it seems to me.
Well, if you're going to research, I got interested in foster care. And I did a piece of research through the state on foster care. They sponsored it partly, the university sponsored it partly. And I wrote a series of articles on the results of my research on foster care. It was a question of movement into foster care and then the return home from foster care. What were the factors that impeded this kind of transition? What were the factors that accelerated this kind of transition? And then I went on to doing research on adoptions. At that time, social workers were very reluctant to place older children, which is defined as a 5-year-old child, for adoption, because the supposition was that he came from a dysfunctional family, and if he had lived 5 years in a dysfunctional family, he's likely not to be able to make an adequate adjustment to adoption. And it turned out that the largest percentage of them, there were some adoption failures, the largest percentage of them was successful. And the message to the field was that you have these children who need adoption, it's unethical not to consider them, when the research shows to some extent that this might have an opportunity of making a successful adoption.
So you got into foster care, you got into adoption, and then from there you...
And then I did a piece on child abuse.
Okay.
The piece on child abuse was concerned with physical abuse. And we were interested in determining what happened in that interaction so as to alert the social worker how he could work with the client and prepare the client for the fact that this might happen, and this might, you might going to do this, and you might do this. Watch yourself, see? And I wrote a book on that, I and Judy Martin.
And at some point, you have 5 editions, your 5th edition now or 6th edition,
Yeah.
of your child welfare book. So you put it all together. So you've had your books and articles on these specifics, and then you put it together.
Yes.
And was it the first, or was it certainly, in my mind, one of the more well-known or most well-known book in child welfare services in social work practice? So when it came out, how was it received when it came out?
Oh, it was received very warmly, as a matter of fact. We got very good reviews, you know, in the book reviews of the thing. It was more comprehensive than the books that have been previously available. The textbook writing is organizing the knowledge of the field in a way that makes it useful for transmission to the worker, enabling him, as he reads this, makes use of it, to do a better job.
And in some ways, that theme of your synthesizing the research
That's right.
Really goes through some of your major books, the interview book, child welfare, supervision.
Supervision, too.
Consultation.
Yes.
So some of the core parts of social work practice, one of your major contributions is bringing disparate, and not just social work research, I think it's important to say.
Yeah.
In other words, you brought research from all the...
Oh, yeah. No, wherever the research was relevant. And see, that was another thing. A lot of the social work literature hadn't made an effort to exploit what was available elsewhere. And this was more available. This could contribute to the knowledge that is useful in effective performance.